Ah! Hello, everyone. My apologies. Keep trying to get videos done, and the real world keeps intruding. I've had some family stuff happening this week. It's been eating up a lot of my time. I don't want to go into all of that. But as a result, this is going to be an abbreviated stream today. I think I can only do an hour. I've got too much on my plate trying to balance work and real life with the YouTube thing. The YouTube's got to lose out to real life and real work. And then this next weekend, I'm going to be out of town. So sorry to do a relatively brief kind of thing. None of this is an afterthought to me, but there's only so much time I have, and I have not found the magic trick to balancing everything perfectly. How y'all doing out there? Everyone coming in from all over the place, which is good. Colombia, South Africa. That might be the furthest. Southern California. Indiana. Howdy, everybody. Germany. Hey, Dustin, you made it at the beginning for you. Not for once, but it's been a while. You've been checking in a little bit late lately. I assume you've been on the road. Hope everyone is well. Hope everyone is dealing well with the heat, especially those of you in Europe who are unaccustomed to it. I'm supposedly accustomed to it, but it takes the wind out of my sails. My office became my office because it is the room in the house that's the coldest in winter and the hottest in summer. And normally I've got a fan on blast helping out in here, but I turn it down for these streams. Otherwise you'd hear the in the background. Anyway, only get some questions and make it worth your time for being here. It's not just a matter of checking in with me, but people do like to have their questions answered. I have not seen the new 62 Deluxe amp that Fender has, but given Fender's track record, I would be very surprised if it were a worthwhile purchase, since the Sur Ombre is on the market, and the Sur Ombre is essentially a 62 Deluxe, built better than any of the current production Fender amps since 1981. So, but maybe the one that says Fender is great, I would suggest buying it used, because their CEO is an asshat, and I don't want to support them. But that's your call. But I can tell you that John Sur is a hell of a nice guy, and he loves his dog, and he does not threaten people. So he makes a hell of an amp too. So I would suggest the Sur Ombre if you're in the market for a 62 variant of a Deluxe. Friggin' 40 degrees. I assume you're in some place where they use drug dealer temperatures, so that's really friggin' hot. Where would you use spiral filament tubes and long plates? Well, spiral filament tubes can be less prone to heater noise. They can be quieter. They're often combined with long plates. Long plates can also have a lower noise floor. Both are commonly good choices for a phase inverter. The trouble is long plate tubes have a tendency to be prone to microphonics. And so in the first stage or two of a typical amp, it can be a tricky choice there. But they usually are very wonderful tubes for phase inverter positions. Most amps use an LTP, long-tailed pair, or a Schmidt phase inverter. That's your Marshalls, most of your Fenders, except for the Princeton and the Champ. That's most Voxes, aside from that AC-50 that had a paraphase. But the 50s Fenders had some paraphase and cathodines, but the traditional deluxe reverb, twin reverb. Those tubes nominally have a gain factor. Well, those phase inverters nominally are unity gain. They have a little bit of gain, not much. So there's no real huge risk of microphonics there. And you just get a very quiet, well-performing tube there. That's a good choice. If you want to use some other places, if it sounds good to you, it's a fine choice. Clive is in the Netherlands. Rob's in Austin. Could I recommend some printed books to learn the basic housing wise, as I'm a newbie to this and building a mojo tone is not learning why. Okay. Housing wise, is that a typo? Did you mean wiring wise? Let me see. I'm not sure what you're asking in terms of housing wise. Yeah, building a kit will not teach you how things work. Well, there are some books at the link that I'm about to put up here, Timothy. I've got this link that I use so often that I've made it a permanent feature. valvewizard.co.uk, and maybe I can one day I'll learn how to do this first try. Merlin Blenko's site is fantastic. He has links on that website to his books, which are very good. He has some sample chapters and sections on various aspects. That'd be great. There's Kevin O'Connell's The Ultimate Tone series. Volume 3 would be a good place to start to a large degree. And then there are the classic books, which do involve a little more math than most people are really interested in. I would suggest starting with Merlin's chapters. And if that intrigues you and you want to go further down that path, get his books. And if at that point, the older publications that were pretty much for the slide rule crowd await, that's where I would start. What should I be aware of before purchasing any vintage pedals, even ones that appear to be working, like a 70s Big Muff, for example? Hey, Dan. Well, there are two things you have to bear in mind with older pedals. Most pedals, older and newer, use electrolytic caps. Electrolytic caps have a relatively short lifespan, typically 15 to 20 years. A little bit longer on some smaller value caps, so you can get 30-year-old caps that are still technically functioning. But it's very common with an old Boss pedal or an old fuzz face or whatever the old thing is, for just one or two electrolytic caps to dry out and need to be changed out. And that's easily changed. The other consideration, mostly with old fuzzes and such, are some of the germanium components used back in the day. Germanium transistors in particular have not been made in a really long time, and it's really kind of a black art of gain matching some old germanium transistors. So there can be things that can wear out, that can be hard to replace. And, I guess inductors and wahs can be tricky. You could have a really fantastic old wah and needs a new inductor. The new inductor technically works, but the magic's gone, or whatever it was that made that wah sound great to you. But in general, an old pedal, if as long as it has good clean grounds and all the connections are solid, doesn't have any corrosion on the board, and the electrolytics can be changed out, there's not any real reason it can't work. I guess one other caveat would be like an old Mutron or similar electroharmonics, where they had the board mounted to the pots on some long stilt connections on the pots, and the pots are held to the chassis by nuts, and then the three long leads from the pots are what solder the board in place, and that holds the board. And over time, if those pots wear out, some of those pots have not been made in 40, 50 years. They're really hard to get replacements for. But that's kind of an outlier. Most pedals weren't built that way. Hey, Count Domingo, think about putting a 2-Rock TR12 speaker in my 12-inch Princeton Reverb Reissue. Since it's rated 90 to 100 watts, do I think it'd be a good move? Well, it'd be totally safe. That Princeton won't have any remote chance of hurting that speaker. I'm not sure that it's going to be the most efficient speaker at the relatively low output of a Princeton, which is 12 to 15 watts clean. So I'm not sure that speaker is going to want to exercise its cone as much. But I've used 65, 70 watt speakers in Princeton's, and they sound great. So I'm just not familiar with the 2-Rock TR12. It may be phenomenal, but It either sound good to you or it won't. Cannot be will not be unsafe in any regard. Yeah, man, Memphis, South Carolina. You know, we have our level of heat, which is pretty oppressive. Then you go down to Houston or New Orleans, and you're like, okay, this is next level. But I have all year to get ready for it, and come late August, I'm like, why do I live here again? Why don't we all go nocturnal? Can I make it through another summer? But eventually I do, and then we get blizzards in the winter, and I have something else to complain about. Yeah, Asimir's and having a foggy morning in San Francisco. Rob just moved from Montana to Texas. Well, yeah, it's got to take you a little bit to get used to that Texas heat. Where in Texas did you move? Because down along the coast, it's brutal. The rest of it's more of a dry heat. More of. I'm not saying it's easy. Like next weekend, I'm going to be in Phoenix, where nominally it's hotter, typically, than in Memphis, but it's dry. I have never been painfully hot in Phoenix when I visited in the summer, but in Memphis, in the shade, you can die. Hey, Matt Mayhem, I have a gutted Pro Junior that I want to use for a 10 to 15 watt Tweak style build. Suggestions? Thoughts on a Harvard versus Deluxe versus hand-wired Pro Junior versus parallel single-ended 5F2A. Oh, let me take the Valve Wizard link off now. I forgot that I left that up there. Though it's a good link. Sorry, I wasn't looking at that part of the screen. I was looking at your everyone's comments. I'm not a huge fan of single-ended amps. Cards on the table. I don't. In terms of the parallel as single-ended 5F2. I'm not a fan of the Pro Junior, and I'm not a fan of the Pro Junior's chassis. I think that it would be a lot more work to turn a Pro Junior into a real amp than it would be to buy a Tweed kit and start from scratch, so to speak. I would say if you're not happy with a Harvard or a Deluxe, you're probably not going to be happy with any small amp. And you're not saving that much. You're saving no time, and you're not saving that much money using a Pro chassis, because the Pro chassis, you're stuck with having to drill out holes for real pots. You're stuck with tube openings that are way too big to have a direct mounted socket, so you've got limitations of what you can put in there. Then my buddy Brad at Brad's Guitar Garage does have some drop-in upgrade boards that could be repurposed for such a thing. I just don't think Pro Junior is a good platform to make a better amp out of. I think if you have a door that's not particularly heavy, it's a good way to hold it open. But I would get a Harvard or Tweed Deluxe kit and start from scratch. Save yourself a ton of time. Spend a little bit more money, maybe. I'm not sure if even you would in the end run, because there's so many things you have to do to the other chassis, and have an amp that you know would be great. But you can do whatever you want. That's the nice thing about this life. As long as you don't kill yourself or anyone else. What's my opinion of the build quality of the current Marshall Silver Jubilee reissues? How do they compare to the original late 80s Jubilees? Hey, it's Mike Chandler. I've had two. I had one of the baby version, the small ones, one of the full-size ones. Both of them had the same problem. They had those little green square plastic pots, as opposed to the 24 millimeter standard size pots of the real deal from the late 80s and early 90s. And on both of them, those little green pots had developed dendrites, tin whiskers. I had to blow them out with compressed air and follow that with some deoxit fader lube to make the amps work again. And the build quality was not great. It looks cool on the outside. On the inside, it's built just like all the other standard reissue Marshall things. Not even reissues, because the Plexia reissues, by which I mean the 59 and 87 and 2203 reissues, are actually pretty good amps. But most of the current stuff, the SL and the, I can't remember all the model names. Almost everything, if you go to Sweetwater, put in Marshall, pretty much everything they offer now, except for the actual reissue series, and the Jubilee is not part of the reissue series, at least not internally. The stuff they're doing today is not very good, which is sad. Sounds pretty good when it works, but there's no guarantee it's going to continue to work. Hey, Dave Castro picked up a PV-SC3 triple humbucker. Ooh, middle push-pull, no volume. Thinking Guitar Madness humbuckers and push-pull pots. 3 volume, 1 tone. Any idea? I would say that it's really easy to go down the rabbit hole of, and then I could have these options and this option, and then this combination, and it sounds cool on paper, but it can be really hard to use live on the fly, or you can be very confusing. I think it'd probably be the easiest thing to do would be to wire it with just a standard Les Paul bridge, neck, both bridge and neck switch, volume and tone, master volume, master tone, and wire get a reverse wound, so C-taper pot that's between the middle pickup and the output jack. So, and you can even get or do it so that you have to turn it down to hear it, and then it could be a push-pull. You could have neck and bridge from the traditional stuff with just a two-way switch, three-way switch, and master volume, master tone. And then with the other knob, you could bring in the middle pickup along with whatever else is selected. Or you could just do it as a push-pull pot and not have a volume level. It's either on or off. And whatever your pickup selector is on, if the other pot is up, you've got the middle pickup added to it. That would give you all 5 positions without having to remember, I turn this here, and then this combination. So just be one little 3-way switch, volume, tone, and then one that you even get a push-push pot if you want to get fancy, just to turn that middle pickup on. That would be the fastest way to do it. But, that's how I would do it. It's the more options you have when playing live, the harder it is to repeat a sound. Or it takes you out of the playing because you're observing yourself and thinking about the sequence of stuff to do. It's kind of nice on a Strat or a Tele, like, hey, I want a fatter sound, flick it this way. I want a brighter sound, flick it that way. That's about, same kind of for Les Paul. Dark, bright, dark, bright. Most of us on a gig, that's your mentality. Or you learn to roll your volume pot as well, or you get a volume pedal. But you don't want to be thinking, all right, for this next verse, I need to flip these 2 switches and turn this knob to exactly 6.5. You get my point. Hey, Derek, thank you very much. Very kind of you. Do I recommend the Allesandro Handwire Deluxe Reverb with this spec Neo speaker? Please explain what I should be looking for in one. Well, I have seen the inside of 2 Allesandros, but not in person. One of which was done very, very well, and with a very nice board, and it was on my buddy Frank's channel, Forgotten Gear Restorations. And I've seen another one a number of years ago that was kind of a hot mess inside from what I saw of the pictures. But I don't know whether that was done by Allesandro himself, or whether he had other employees. Maybe someone did a Friday amp and Allesandro didn't take a look at it. It might have sounded great, but it didn't look very nice. So just see if everything inside looks neat and deliberate, if you can see the inside of it first. And the one that Frank had on this channel was done very, very well. Everything was very neat, very thought out, and sounded good. The speaker sounds really good. I don't know if I have not tried his Neo speaker, but the ceramic version of the Allesandro that Emmons is making is fantastic. So I've only heard one Neo speaker that I thought was worth using. That's the Neo Creamback. Maybe the Neo Allesandro is the other one, but I've not heard it. What modifications, upgrades would I make on a stock AC-15 C1? Hey, Eric. Well, I do a couple of things that are above and beyond. I changed the filtering to be the filtering of a JMI in terms of the sequence. You want to leave the reservoir and screen nodes as they are. Don't decrease those to 16 in the AC-15 or AC-30C, because there's some solid state stuff there, and there's a solid state rectifier circuit, including sag, and it doesn't have a choke, so it needs that additional capacitance since it doesn't have a choke. And it's fine without a choke, but you don't automatically just copy everything JMI did for the sake of it. JMI got away with less filtering because they had a relatively massive choke on those amps. But I do change the sequence of the filtering so that the preamp nodes are all derived from the screen node rather than the preamp node being derived from the phase inverter, which is derived from the screen node. That's behind the scenes thing. There's a 330K dropping resistor in series before the volume pot on the normal channel. It is, I think, essential that that resistor be jumpered, because it is a massive loss of potential gain in that channel, and it also makes the bright cap sound a little bit over the top. That's the circuit that you find in the stock one is pretty much the circuit of the stock normal channel in a JMI AC-30, except it's the one from the JMI AC-30 treble version. And my mods, jumping that 330K, take it closer to the normal channel of the normal version, which is the preferred one. In stock form, that channel's got a 22 nanofarad coupling cap on the normal channel. The JMI's had a 47 there. I like the 22 much better than the 47, but I'll decrease that to a 10 or even a 4.7 if I want to get a little bit of a tighter low end. Depends on how much gain you play with. Other than that, I bump up the screen grids to 1K, 2-watt 1Ks, and I bump up the grid stoppers are already 3K, so there's not a lot that needs to be done. And none of what I just said needs to be done, but I find it nice. I also changed the way the bass pot is wired so that it is the true JMI tone stack, though works clockwise instead of counterclockwise. I don't want to get confusing, because in stock form it's the modern variant of the JMI tone stack, where it has a little less mid-range interrelation between the treble and bass. The mids are more fixed in the stock amp. I changed it so that they shift around and get unpredictable like they are in the original ones, the old ones. Oh, and I changed the solid state stuff to unity gain. In stock form, the solid state circuitry for the effects loop and reverb and tremolo, all that, adds a little bit of gain. It's a factor of 1 to 1.4, and I changed it to 1 to 1. But this stock amp sounds really good. It just, after all that's done, it sounds mo better. Hey, Matt, does a list exist of which factories currently produce tubes? Or where they get the tubes from? Well, almost every Russian tube, New Sensor is the distributor. That's Sovtek, that's Gold Lion, that's Electro-Harmonix, that's Tungsol, that's Muller Reissue. They're all coming from one factory, which is in Russia, the former Soviet Union. That's one factory. It might be more than one factory, but I think it's just the one. But anyway, that's where all the Russian tubes are made on the same production lines. And then you have the Chinese, used to have Shuagang, and I'm not sure the Shuagang is back. They had a fire, I think in 2019. But there is another Chinese plant that was built during and after COVID, and that's who makes both the Pizvane and the stuff branded and sold as TAD, Tube Amp Doctor. Sadly, those are to be avoided. The Pizvanes are junk, and we had Brad and I and other techs we know had a lot of failures with the Tube Amp Doctor branded Chinese tubes, and we found out what it was. Brad's got a video up on it. The fucking tube bases are made of conductive plastic. So, or plastic which becomes conductive with heat and high voltage. Guess what's really bad? when you have something conductive connecting all the pins of a 6L6 or 6V6. And then you've got the Slovakian factory who makes JJs. That's in the former Czechoslovakia. So that's pretty much it. And then you have brands like Ruby, which rebrand some JJs and rebrand some Sovtecs and some Electroharmonics. So Groove Tubes also relabels Electroharmonics and other brands. But usually on the other side of the tube where it says Groove Tubes, it'll say Electroharmonics or whatever. East side of Austin. Well, keep it weird, man. On behalf of us, enjoy the food, enjoy everything about Austin. It's a fun town, except when they've got a festival in town like South by Southwest and all that. Great food. Worth the temperatures. Do I have to be mindful of polarity when connecting the 5-volt stuff like the pilot light and tube heaters? Not the pilot light. Tube heaters, there are those who say you should alternate this tube to this tube to this tube. I put pins 9 and pins 7 all together, and pin 2 on the octals and 4 and 5 on the novals all together. And I have consistently had good results. There's no polarity per se because it's AC, but I do mind, keep that in mind when I'm wearing the tubes up. Doesn't matter which side of the lamp you use though. The monsoon summer rains are moving into Arizona next week, bringing higher humidity. Well, damn it, that's when I'm going to be there. I'm hoping it's not just, I really hope it's not storms. And what do y'all call the big summer storms with all the sand? It's a weird word. It's not monsoon, but it's a similar sounding word. I've been in one. It's not fun. The world goes black and it's all dust and yuck. But I'm hoping it'll be beautiful weather because I'm bringing my cameras. Haboob, that's it. That's right. I've been in one haboob, and it was this time of year. Hey, RS-85851. That's a fun one to say. At 117 volts, you got plate to cathode, 312 volts, 40 milliamps per tube, 12.5 watts screen voltage. You got 6.7 volts on the heaters. Well, I'm not sure what you're describing there. Sounds like a pretty good setup for EL84s. A little bit high on the heaters though. What are you describing there? Hey, Brad. I don't see a previous or later thing on that. So give me some more information there. But that sounds like a pretty good setup for EL84s or 6V6s, except for the heaters seem a bit high. Thank you, Jack Cole. I appreciate you very much. That's very kind. Just purchased Marshall Class 5 combo. What are my tube and speaker recommendations? As far as tubes go, just get some JJs. That amp does not stress out tubes, and you mostly want reliability. Now, be aware, I just had a Class 5 in 2 days ago. Belonged to a client. I usually don't take those in, but a guy was bringing in his big super reverb as well, his 68 super reverb. And I said, yeah, I'll do your Class 5. And his Class 5 had numerous broken solder joints on it because it was built poorly and time has passed and the amp gets moved. But every single post, the amp's got posts where all the quick connects slide onto, and those posts are soldered onto the board. And the board is a very thin PCB and it's single-sided. And over time, because there's mechanical stress on those posts sticking up, which have the quick connects on them, they get the little hairline cracks that accelerate, and then they have bad solder joints. I had to reflow like 8 of those, and I reflowed R6, which is the choke resistor. Other than that, it sounded good. Everything else cleaned up just fine. That so be aware of that. As far as speaker recommendations, man, it's really up to you. I bet a G12 H30 would be a good pairing with that, though. But so would almost any Marshall adjacent 12-inch speaker. The only one I would give you a warning about would be a greenback, because I'm not a big fan of the greenback in an open back 1x12. I don't think it has enough low end, and it really becomes nasal in that situation. Thank you very much for the super chat. It's very kind of you. Right? I think if you're a librarian, Maine's a much better bet than South Carolina. I hate having to say that about South Carolina. I love the Charleston area, and I love parts of the culture there along the coast, and then there's the rest of the state. I'm sure you know what I mean. How do I determine which instrument ends up sold or traded? I feel like the amount of basses, guitars I own, I should sit down and write pros and cons of each. When was the last time you played it? If you haven't played it in 6 months, maybe it's time to turn it into something you will play, or turn that into money for something else. But I can't tell you what to keep and what to sell. Everyone's got their own emotional relationship with these things. Hey, Chris, what's the deal with heater center taps versus artificial ones? What would I use and why? If a power transformer has a physical center tap, I leave it disconnected. I always leave it disconnected, and almost every old Fender that comes in that has a physical center tap, I disconnect it. I disconnect it because I have seen it happen that you'll be a heater short. Something shorts to a heater in the amp, and if it has a physical center tap, before the mains fuse can blow, the wires, the secondary on the power transformer can melt. The filament secondaries can melt because it's capable of producing a lot of current. And if you get a short, it will draw a lot of current. And so you will see the burn just go right up the line and go down into the transformer. Whereas if you separate the physical center tap, lift that up and put an artificial center tap with some half-watt resistors, and then you have a heater short, instead of watching the fire go up the line and into the transformer and kill a very expensive power transformer, you see one or two little half-watt resistors blow. They'll burn open, and then you'll have an amp that hums, but there's no other issue. And then you change out those two resistors. You can also get a much better heater balance using resistors versus just trusting the windings of the transformer to be perfectly balanced, which they never are. But it's mostly to protect the power transformer's longevity. Is there a method to isolate a heat-dependent fault that can be performed by the owner before a tech visit? Tightening pots and jacks fixed overall noise, but the crackling persists. Yeah, there are. Daria, I would suggest if you feel comfortable with the chassis being open when the amp is on, you can get a can of compressed air and have the amp on and wait till you hear the crackles, and spray an area of the board. And if the crackles go away after you hit it with the compressed air, hitting something with compressed air within 6 inches is going to cool that area off temporarily. So if the crackle goes away when you spray that area, you got something heat related in that area. If it doesn't, try the next area. You won't hurt anything doing that. Nothing that wasn't already on the way out. Now, don't do that to your tubes. If you ice down a hot glass tube, predictable things can happen because the glass only has so much thermal shock. But I'm talking about on the board, on a component that you're concerned about. That's the way to do it. The other way to do it is you heat something up until you get a failure mode, but much better just to use some compressed air to cool it off. That make sense? Land of the free and home of the what the fuck. Yeah, it's getting bad out there. Getting bad, I say. It's already bad out there. Hey, Barland, All right, I don't. Hopefully they take and burn books. All right, goodbye. Goodbye. You want to ban a book? I'll ban you. Motherfuckers, get off my channel. Morons. The world is full of morons and they think they're winning. We can't let them. My mother has a t-shirt with LeVar Burton on it, and it says, read banned books. And I love my mom so much for that. I'm going to go buy a gay book and read it today just to get back at that guy. Yeah. You should try reading them instead of burning them. Goose-stepping morons. I don't do a very good Connery out of the blue. Gotta clear your throat a little bit for that. Goose-stepping morons. Do I have any experience with G&L Strat style guitars? Yeah, they're good. The G&Ls are fantastic. Even the tributes are good. But yeah, G&L, that's George and Leo. Yeah, absolutely, they're good. Matt, you know, I got you, man. I got you. They can come for me, whatever. I'm sure they're going to find some reason to anyway, eventually. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that, sir. Oh, Eric, it's not necessary, but I don't have the interface in front of me. I can't tell you. I think it's same here. It says chat publicly as, then there's like a smiley face, and there's a dollar sign, and there's a plus. I think if you click on the dollar sign, but you don't have to donate. It is fully optional. I want a great player Princeton reverb. Could buy a 1966 with modern replacement output transformer or a new custom build with boutique parts. Thought something else? Oh man, if you can buy the 66 with a replacement output transformer, go for it. There's nothing special about the output transformer on a Princeton reverb. It's not an esoteric part. If you got a Habor or a Classic Tone or Mercury, it's just as good as the old Schumacher. And you know, something about a Princeton, just a perfect little thing. If it's in good shape, get the 66. Oh, they figured it out. Thank you very much, sir. I do appreciate it. See, I don't see them in the sequence that you guys see. And I'm also not scrolling down very far. I'm looking in the small area so I can really see each one. Burn books. Yeah. Get the fuck off my channel if you want to burn a book. There are lots of channels out there waiting for you. Hey, Clivey. AB763 Twin preamp paired to a 40 or 50 wattish power amp. Any suggestions? Thinking of a single channel without tremolo. Are you looking for something that's already on the market like that? Closest two things on the market to that, in terms of one thing that already exists, would be either the Cerebella or the new Fender Pro Reverb reissue. It's not a reissue of a Pro Reverb, but it's a single channel Fender with reverb and tremolo into a 40 watt output section. It's a good amp, but I think the Cerebella would probably be the better choice. Okay, you built to 74 18 watt. Those are good specs. All right, 6.5 volts on the heaters. That's much better. But yeah, all those specs look good. Trying to think one thing. Yeah, 12.13 per tube. You're sitting pretty with those specs, man. Those are great. Hey, Ashley, just bought a deluxe reverb reissue. It's made in 2024, and when the amp is powered on and off, I turn the standby switch off and the amp pops. Any thoughts? Yeah, sometimes standby switches pop. I have two thoughts on this. First of all, standby switches pop because standby switches have 400 something volts DC across them, and those switches are rated for AC, not DC. Those switches are rated for a lot of AC and very little DC. Now, fortunately, there's not a lot of current present, so the switches don't always fail. But it is physically hard on the switches. Eventually, the switches do fail. Second of all, a deluxe reverb does not need a standby switch for any reason. So never use it. Just use the power switch. Just leave it always in play on the standby switch. Just power the amp on, wait a minute, play. When you're ready to turn it off, just turn it off. That's all you need to do. So don't worry about the standby switch. It was a mistake for Fender to include that. And then time passes and people think it was a good idea because Fender did it, but it was a dumb thing. Any thoughts on Supro Sahara combo amp? You think it's worth trying to get the noise floor down? Any thoughts on Bruce Zinke old builds? Well, I'm not familiar with the Sahara or Sahara. The only Supros worth playing are the ones made before 1970, or the ones that say Sun Dragon, which are very different kettle of fish. Every other Supro I've seen since then has been some degree of a pile of shit. Some of them steaming, some of them literally flaming, and the ones that Zinke did are some of the worst offenders. Offenders, not worst of Fenders. Just asinine, stupid decisions with giant hot resistors right on a board right next to other things, and they all bake each other and they burn each other, and ceramic tube sockets that break, and just garbage. Don't buy them. Supros are wanted by those who worship Jimmy Page, and the new amps don't sound anything like the amp Page used, and they're not built that way. Or those who like funky old things for the sake of it being a funky old thing. And this Supros made since 1970 are not funky old things. They're just garbage. They're taking advantage of false nostalgia. Avoid them. Terry Black's barbecue is awesome. Well, it's pretty good, but it's not barbecue. You got to cross the Arkansas River to get to barbecue. Middle pickup. Bought a drip edge dual Showman reverb on Reverb last week. Arrived broken from shipping. Can I work on this next month? Also got your TBX you still want fixed up. Yeah, shoot me an email, including what you think is broken about it. Shoot me an email. I'll look for it after the stream. RS, I usually say that this at the beginning of each stream. Please only ask any one question the one time, because it's hard for me to, if I see the same thing again and again, it makes me think I've scrolled wrong. I've already answered this. The only thing I see with those numbers is that your heaters seem a little bit high, but I don't know what transformer you're using, how many tubes you have in the amp. But 6.7 is acceptable. It's just on the slightly high side. Everything else I see on your numbers for an EL84 or a 6v6 are ideal. How would you know when you could sub a different type of capacitor for electrolytic? What is the difference between electrolytics and, say, film or mica? That's a big subject. In general, you can substitute a film cap for an electrolytic anywhere if you can find a film cap with that capacitance and voltage capability that you can find, can afford, and will physically fit. Because to get a 22 microfarad cap with a film cap, you're talking a capacitor this big. Say you got a 630 volt film cap, for that 22 microfarad, it's a big cap. Electrolytic can be much smaller, tantalum even smaller, but they burn up. There are very few occasions where you need a cap which has a polarity, in which case electrolytic is one of the better choices, but usually it's not necessary for a cap to have polarity. If a cap does have polarity, you do have to observe it, but a film cap usually does not. A film cap does not have polarity. What is the difference between electrolytics and, say, old film and mica? Man, if you were to have a 22 microfarad 600 volt mica cap, besides the fact it would cost a ton, it'd be very, very large, very, very heavy, very, very fragile. Mica is a material, it's a hard mineral, and it's only used for small value caps for a reason. Basically, the only reason we ever use electrolytic caps is to get a lot of capacitance at high voltage in a small size. like a 25 microfarad, 25 volt electrolytic is very small. A 25 volt, 25 microfarad film cap would be very large. A 250, a 0.25 25 volt film cap would be large, let alone something that's rated, was that 100 times more? Film requires a lot of layers to get up to a capacitance, where electrolytes cheat a little bit in terms of how the materials are used. But that's beyond the subject of this thread, because I don't have examples to show you or charts or anything. Well, as long as you don't send us any of your damn Winnipeg winter, we'll be all right. Hey, Robbie F. Do I have a go-to for barbecue in Savannah or Tybee? I've never had barbecue in Savannah or Tybee. I don't tend to get barbecue when I'm on the East Coast. It's not their strength. If I were in Savannah or the Charleston area, I'd be going for seafood and gullah food and shrimp and grits and things like that. I'm sure they have barbecue. I know you get a little bit more in country, and then you get into Piedmont, so they have very, very regional barbecue. But I don't order barbecue on the beach, and I don't order barbecue in New York, and I don't order, I'm not going to order pizza in places where they don't make it, like Chicago. Have I ever put the chassis from a combo into a head shell? I don't. I've not. I've been asked to, but I don't. I advise people, if you need to do that, if it's a head shell that it'll, if the head shell fits the chassis, you don't need a guy like me to do it. You just take it out, you slide it into the other cab, and if it doesn't fit, you need a carpenter, not a guy like me. The only downside is if it's a combo that has reverb, it's really hard to do reverb in a head, because the transformer is too close to the tank. But it depends on how heavy the amp is. There's always an advantage to having a head over a combo, especially if you have to do load ins and depends on how you get to the gig. But it's also increasingly common for people to say, I don't need a 100-watt head anymore. I'll just take this 15-watt combo. Then you only have to take one trip with a 1x10 or 1x12. Hey, Flash84, for JVM EVHs and 6505s, are there relatively easy ways to fortify them, or is there so much wrong with them there's no redemption? Well, I can't lump the JVM in with the two PVs. But the PVs, well, first of all, if we're talking EVHs, if you mean a 5150, a PV, that's one thing. If we're talking the Fender ones are absolute garbage. Don't waste your time. You cannot save them. They're built to die. They will die. And before they die, the MIDI will go out. The JVMs aren't terrible, but they're not great. The 5150s and 6505s, as long as the heater supply is addressed in terms of the heater wires to the 6L6s, the heater supply to 6L6s in the stock form goes through a small ribbon cable with like 26 gauge wire. It will burn. If yours has not, it just has not yet. It will burn the traces on the board, as well as burning the connectors, as well as burning the ribbons. And the solution to that is to cut the trace going from that supply up into the ribbon, but leave it going to the preamp ribbon, because it's fine to go over the ribbon cables to the preamp stuff, and then just run some wires from the downstream side of the heater fuses to the octal, the pins 2 and 7 on one of the 6L6s. That's the main thing. The other thing is the The muting relays, the J174s often die. Sometimes just because the transistors die, and sometimes because did I say relays or transistors? And sometimes you'll have a problem with the low voltage supply that switches them on and off, but that's usually easily fixed. But the JVMs, they're just nothing that great about them, and the EVHs are absolute trash. Man, I love Pugin's Porch. Pugin's Porch is fantastic. I need to get back down there. I love Charleston. I've spent more time in Charleston than I have in Savannah, but I love both of them. So, for those who haven't been, Charleston is kind of like, hey, what if New Orleans had been built by the English instead? So there has certain advantages, just like New Orleans. And then they're like, yeah, that's fucking British. There's no touch of the Spanish or French here at all. But, if you like palmettos, that is. Yeah, I saw it after the fact. It sounds like your voltages are good. AO43 power transformer. Okay, I think you're probably fine. I'd just be a little bit wary about the heater voltage long term, but that's hard to tweak. Why do they keep electing Lindsey Graham? Because there's more to the state than the places where the colleges are. If you look at the voting maps per county, wherever there's a lot of hospitals and a university and a lot of businesses, they don't vote for Lindsey Graham. But you go out to the boondocks and the sticks, that's his constituency. It's not just South Carolina. We've got Marsha freaking Blackburn raging against fortune cookies right now because she's vowing to fight communism. My gosh, the fucktards in the Tennessee legislature and our U.S. representatives and senators, they've been doing their best to fight capitalism as far as I can tell, as far as any business opportunity goes or for economic growth. But she's had it with those fortune cookies. It's trouble living in Tennessee. It's hard to make fun of any other state right now because we got Marsha Blackburn. Yeah, El Nino's on the way. It won't take out the right people. Oh, you want to rehouse your deluxe reverb reissue? Well, if you can live without if you want to live without the reverb, you can put it in a head shell. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to have reverb, there's no point because by the time you get a head shell tall enough for the reverb to be far enough away from the transformers, you might as well just keep it in the combo anyway. Are there any resources out there that shows how to move the resistors to the tube sockets on the 68 Custom Pro Reverb? Can't find out how to do that mod, and do I still recommend the G10C for these amps? Oh, what is the 68? Oh, that's a Princeton Reverb. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I do recommend the G10C for those amps. I recommend, and I've got various videos up on the Fender reissued playlist that show moving the heater, not the heaters, or the screen grid resistors from the board to the octal sockets. Same for the Princeton 68 Princeton Reverb custom thing as for the 65 Deluxe Reverb. There's no real difference other than what the reverb number was on the original one. And if you find, I'm sure I've got some showing that on the 65 reissue Princeton. It's the exact same board in the 65 as in the 68. So it's the same process. We got 5 more minutes and I got to go because I got some family stuff going on, as I said. So let me make sure I've don't miss any super chats like this one here. Hey, Matt. Very kind of you. The coffee fund is always appreciated. Absolutely. Don't threaten to burn books with an English major's channel. Duh. I mean, I know you're stupid, but how stupid can you be? That's next level dumb. He will not be missed. I'm going to pick up. I'll check for that this afternoon. It might be later today, but I will. Man, tar and feathering sounds funny until you realize what it really, really was. It was an awful thing to do to someone. Do I know any good amp techs in the Biloxi, Mississippi area? Sorry, no, I don't. But I need to get back down to the Biloxi area as soon as I can. I love it down there as well. Speaking of great seafood, but I don't know any techs down there. Sorry. For those who, I like the rest of Colorado. Again, Dan, it's the same thing. Like I said, if there are universities and hospitals and actual businesses, yeah, no problem at all. It's all the stuff in the middle that screws it up. We could have had the best century ever. We were so close. Yeah. I don't know Rue de Jean, but I know Pugin's Porch. I've eaten there on 3 different trips to Charleston. I'll have to do it again next time I make it. Especially when the weather's nice. You sit out on the porch on the upper level and feel the breeze coming off from the bay. I'm gonna wrap it up here. Let me take off that comment, and we're gonna go to this thing. Yeah, I'm probably going to take Nikki to Savannah before I take her to Charleston. She's not been to either place. But I went to Charleston last with a previous girlfriend, and it's kind of weird to do the same date with a different date. We'll eventually get there because I think she'd really like Charleston as much as I do. But we'll probably do Savannah next, so that'll be our trip. But I think we're looking at heading up to Chicago before we head to the coast. I was looking at maybe this fall us going up to the Outer Banks in North Carolina, say in November, off season. No tourists, no surfers, but beautiful weather, but it's so expensive to get there because you can't fly there, and it's like a 20-hour drive, and gas is so expensive these days. So it's cheaper for us to fly or take the train to Chicago for a weekend than it would be to go to the Outer Banks and rent an off-season cabin, and that's just not right. But we do love Chicago, and we've not been since 2014, so we are overdue to revisit Chicago. I give them shit for their deep dish pizza. The tavern style is fine, and I give them shit for the hot dogs because they put vegetables on them. But they also have real hot dogs there too. You can get them New York style with some kraut and some mustard as God intended. And then they have a lot of other really good food and fantastic museums. And we're going to do the architecture tour on the river, and we're going to walk the city, and we're going to get good food and go to the Field Museum and go to the Art Institute and see where things take us, because it's a beautiful place to be. And that'll probably be October. So after the heat, but before the cold. Anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go. Sorry to only do 1 hour this week, but I gotta get out to the hospital after this for a family member. And hope you are all well. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll probably have some videos out this week, but the next live stream will be 2 weeks from now. So thank you very much, all.